A span of the new Westgate Bridge in Melbourne collapsed today, killing at least 28 people and injuring many others. Rescue crews are digging under piles of twisted metal and wood to try and locate 21 men. This is Bob Wilcox in Melbourne, reporting for ABC viewers in all Australian states. The Victorian Premier, Sir Henry Bolte, announced tonight that a royal commission will investigate the disaster. He said the terms of reference of the commission would be decided by a judge who had yet to be appointed. Here's a shot from a film which was taken only last week and which shows the section that collapsed today. The structure across the span on the right of the picture is the one that crashed to the ground. The Westgate Bridge, when completed, will provide a link across the Yarra from Melbourne's western suburbs to the city area. Today's disaster occurred about noon. From the scene, Martin Goddard.
Just before midday today, a huge section of the Westgate Bridge collapsed. The section which now lies in the Yarra mud was a steel shell, which was to be filled with concrete to form part of the bridge's roadway. The span which collapsed was 382 feet long. It fell from a height of 150 feet. According to eyewitnesses, the section of the bridge broke its back along a central seam. There was virtually no warning for the men working inside. According to doctors, dead and injured are in approximately equal numbers. As yet, there is still no firm indication of the numbers of men still inside the wreckage.
The span which collapsed was a steel and concrete section nearly 400 feet long. It weighed several hundred tons. The span toppled after two columns, each 150 feet high, gave way. There was a series of explosions as the span collapsed.
All members of the public out of the area.
A massive rescue operation got underway within minutes of the collapse. Doctors and nurses from nearby hospitals were rushed to the scene. The injured have been taken to 4 Melbourne hospitals where special casualty teams are standing by. Mobile cranes are being used to raise the collapsed span as rescuers dig through mud and rubble for the missing men. Part of the span fell out over an inlet of the River Yarra. Divers are searching the thick mud and shallow water for bodies. The Assistant Police Commissioner at the scene, Mr. Braybrook, has asked for any workers who were on the bridge today and who left without checking with police to contact Russell Street Police Headquarters. 68 men were working on and near the span when it collapsed. There were emotional scenes in the area as workmen recovered bodies from under the tons of mud and rubble. The collapse of the span was witnessed by a number of workmen and motorists.
One tremendous wreckage of steel, mud, slush. It was something shocking.
Were you able to help any of the distressed people?
We helped one fellow out of a crane, or part of the crane that was there. Apparently he was the crane driver, and we helped him out of the situation he was in. And a few workmen came along and took him away then, yes. Right alongside this crane was a shed on fire, and we could hear people scream, but there wasn't anything we could do. We had a look at a couple of the manholes in the top, and we could see bodies down below. We could hear people scream, but there wasn't anything we could do at that stage. By this time, the ambulance and fire brigade arrived, and they got in on the other side then.
While workmen and rescuers probed through the wreckage, trade unions today decided to ban further work on the Westgate Bridge. They walked off the job after today's tragedy, but most of them went straight back to work to help in the search for their workmates. The rescue workers have to cut through tons of twisted steel and concrete before getting to men they believe are trapped on the bottom. Large cranes are lifting the debris as fast as it's cut. Other workmen are using spades and shovels to move the rubble. Rescue operations are expected to go on well into the night. Newsman Martin Goddard spoke to 2 workers at the scene.
From Channel 2 News. I wonder if you could tell me what happened.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I was over the other side and just seen it give a bit of a jump and buckled a bit, and it was all just a cloud of dust and fire, and we came over here to see what we could do, that's all.
What did you do then?
Well, we went inside, we'd seen a few dead, pulled out a couple of live ones early, but most of them are dead anyway.
How many people were there in there?
Inside? Oh, I wouldn't know.
Yes, about 40.
Where,
About 40.
About 40.
where were you at the time, sir?
Oh, well, I'm on night shift on the bridge, you see. So I missed it.
I was here last week and I was on the other side this week. That's how lucky I was. Or I would have been in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So what happened?
When I come across here, I get just a sparkle and a few crackles, and all of a sudden it was like a couple of thunderclaps, you know, and it started very slowly, and all of a sudden the whole thing crashed down, and it seemed to me as if it had given in this end. The big pier over there fell out into the river, and the whole thing came down, and in the middle there it burst into flames right in a matter of a couple of seconds.
What did you do then?
Well, I didn't do anything. I just raced over there to see if there's anyone I could help. But there was bloke coming running out of the sheds. Some I heard on others, and they started to carry blokes out and what have you.
For a report on the situation at the scene now, we cross to our outside broadcast cameras and Martin Goddard.
It's almost night time now, but rescuers are still working beneath the glare of dozens of flood lamps. The latest figures are 28 confirmed dead and 19 seriously injured. It's believed that 2 men are still inside the mass of concrete and steel which was once part of a graceful bridge. Workers are now dismantling the span. Rescuers hold virtually no hope for the 2 men still inside and for more than 10 others still missing. One rescuer told me, "We'll be searching for them for days." The difficulty of reaching the dead and the difficulty of identification have plagued rescuers all day. Divers are now searching the Yarra, and night and cold are further hindering them. Now back to the studio and Bob Wilcox.
The Westgate Bridge is being built by John Holland Proprietary Limited for the Lower Yarra Crossing Authority. The Premier of Victoria, Sir Henry Bolte, this afternoon announced that a royal commission would be held into the cause of the Westgate collapse. He spoke to newsmen.
Well, like everybody else in Australia, I'm still stunned at the tragic news of this accident. And tonight I want to convey the government's and the people's condolences to everyone who was involved, to their families and their relatives, and to assure them that the government and the people will do everything they can to assist them in this tragic incident. I may mention that I have already received telegrams from the Prime Minister, from the Governor-General, conveying to the relatives and friends of these people their sincere sympathies. Also, we've been quick to act and to have authorised a royal commission into the whole incident. And for the present, that's all I want to say.
At a news conference a short time ago, the chairman of the Lower Yarra Crossing Authority, Mr. Oscar Meyer, said that at this stage he did not know what caused the accident. He said the authority would set up its own technical committee of inquiry tomorrow with an independent chairman. Just repeating, police have confirmed that 28 men died when the span of the Westgate Bridge collapsed today. Dozens of men were injured and 19 were taken to hospital. Rescue crews are still trying to locate another 21 men.